All right, hello everybody, and welcome to our next series in our Fiber Lookup and Pricing Pro monthly demo series. So today, for new partners who are on the call, you're going to learn a lot more about the Fiber Lookup, what it offers, what it does, some cool tips and tricks, its main features. For partners who already have access to this tool, who've already seen the capabilities of the Fiber Lookup, we're going to be going over some stuff you probably already know, but I'd also like to show you some things that maybe you haven't encountered yet. And again, those tips and tricks that are just going to help you quote more efficiently, and also just get the information that you need to better serve your customers. So before I get started, this is the Fiber Lookup. This is a proprietary tool developed by ACS. This isn't licensed. It's not from a third party. This is homegrown by our developers. And the benefit of that is that, this was built by developers with telecom experience. And also, as it comes to implementation and additions and changes, we're able to do this in-house. We're not at the mercy of these other, third-party companies. So as you'll find, the Fiber Lookup is going to be miles ahead of some of these other tools that are out there, and for good reason. So I'm going to start off our first address by looking at an address all the way in New York. Anytime you enter an address, you can copy and paste that selection. You can even search the business name, right? If it's a very unique business name, if it's a Pizza Hut, you're going to get 100, lots of different hits. But if it's a very unique company name, you can also search by company name. Once you enter an address, just be sure to actually select something from this drop down. If you're very quick and in a rush and you hit enter, you might run into an error. So just make sure it's actually selected from this drop down. I see my address. I'll hit look up here. And for everyone on the call, if there's any questions, just be sure to hold on to those questions. And at the very end of the call, I'll be sure to answer those for you. Now that we have our address going, you're going to see two different things happening simultaneously. On the left-hand side, you're going to see all these spinning wheels. You're going to see all this different information populate, which we're going to get into very shortly. And then on my main screen here, you're going to see the satellite map, this bird's eye view of the address we entered. And I'm streaming and recording and stuff, but when you're on this, it's going to be a lot more efficient. You're going to see the address you've entered is always going to be indicated by this house, right? So this is the address I've entered, this big old building. I'm in the East Coast in New York. Because the Fiber Lookup is so information rich, you'll notice all these different clusters, right? What do these numbers mean? 55, 84. All this is saying is that if you click on any one of these clusters, there's a cluster of providers in that small proximity. And if we hit uncluster over here at the bottom left-hand corner, it's going to expand that selection. And you can see there's a ton of stuff here, right? This is a very populated area in downtown New York. So we're not surprised to see that there's going to be tons of different provider options available. Now, this building in particular is a data center, so it's going to have a lot of different providers who are already in the building. And then, in our second example, I'm going to show you guys, what it looks like when you have one scenario, you have a customer who has a big high-rise building, multi-tenant unit, tons of different provider availability, and another customer who might be, in Oklahoma, where there's not a lot of different service providers, and how we can still quote those customers effectively through this tool. So for this address, the best way to interpret your results is going to be by looking at this left-hand side, location results. So for this specific address, these results are going to be specific to that address. So you can trust what you're seeing. And because we use real-time APIs, everything that's populated and produced here on the Fiber Lookup is going to be up to date, and it's going to show the latest as well. So if we look at data center location, this is 365 data center. This is the provider. This is their data center location. Shared internet providers. We have Spectrum Coax. We see green. And again, for any one of these different statuses, We can select the icon. What does this green indicate? Green indicates address is serviceable. We can proceed with an installation truck roll. It's the best result we can get. We can quote this, we can generate the contracts, we can run with that all day. Dedicated fiber providers, right? These are all the different dedicated fiber providers that are at this building. Crown Castle, Astound, Lightpath, Verizon, AT&T Fiber. It's showing here, but as you notice in the status, they're actually out of region. In some scenarios, you can still quote them when they're out of region, so we still show you that information. Lumen Fiber and Zayo are on net. Depending on the customer's budget, depending on their bandwidth, their speed needs, you'd be able to look at this and you'd be jumping up in joy happily knowing that there's so many different providers that you can choose from. And once we get into our Pricing Pro, which is our real-time pricing tool, right, through this little click of a button, I'll show you guys very shortly how we're able to get real-time pricing for all of these different providers. If we keep going down this serviceability list, dedicated internet resellers, your AirSpring, your Fusion, your Nitel, these are wholesalers who are utilizing the last mile from some of these other providers to bring services to that customer. There's some added benefits to using wholesalers. Think of them when you're doing these multi-site opportunities. You want to consolidate 50 site location into one bill, 5 site location into one bill. In addition to that, sometimes their pricing can be more competitive than what the underlying provider can offer. And again, we'll be able to kind of tease through that when we look at Pricing Pro and we get the pricing very transparently. Fixed wireless providers, we have Beyond Reach. They are a nationwide fixed wireless provider. They are newer to our partner portfolio and they have been a great addition. We'll look at them a little later as well too. TowerStream, we have OnNet. Windstream is planned build. And then lastly, we have Hughes. They're a satellite provider, so you'll see them for every address you enter. Again, depending on your customer and depending where they are, right? If they're in rural America, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to see what you see in front of our screen. You're not going to see dozens of providers to choose from. You're going to have to get very creative. What's great is that because of the fiber lookup, for those rural customers, we have some very unique providers who thrive in rural locations. Like I mentioned, Beyond Reach, it's in the name. These are for customers who are beyond the typical reach. They offer fixed wireless services to these customers with great outcomes. And then again, HughesNet, because they're nationwide, they're going to be able to provide that satellite service pretty much to any customer if the desire is there. I'm going to keep zooming out here. Some other stuff that you're going to see, some helpful tools that are kind of on your window pane here is you can toggle on and off the fiber providers. If you wanted to look at a very specific provider, right, maybe you only want to see, hey, I only want to see where Astound is located, right? This is Astound NearNet, and then this is Astound OnNet. Maybe there's a specific provider that you wanted to toggle on. You're able to do that with ease. In addition to that, if you keep looking down here, shared internet providers in the area. This looks to be like Spectrum territory. However, Verizon does have their shared fiber, Fios, right? So depending on the customer's budget, this is going to give you a really good glimpse of, who the cable provider is going to be in the area, and also, the competitive cable provider or the shared fiber provider here, Verizon Fios. It's just going to make it that much more competitive and allow you to give your customer more options. As we mentioned earlier, this is a 365 data center location. If you look down here, data center providers, I can toggle this on, and that's indicated by that logo there. But look what happens when I zoom out. If I keep zooming out, you'll start to see more of these logos. But I want to zoom out even further. For partners who have data center opportunities, think about the fiber lookup to plug in that address where your customer's trying to be in between a data center, or they want to know if there's data centers in this state or in this region. By toggling that data center providers button, you can zoom out and you'll notice that these data centers not only span in the US, they also span well into Canada as well. So that's going to be a really good benefit just to really get a transparent idea of, the different data center providers that are going to be available. Lastly, if I toggle back on these fiber providers, under the last one you'll see here is fiber network. You can actually toggle on the fiber network for the whole state. So all you have to do is you see these different ones available. This is going to span throughout the whole state. So if you toggle one of these on and you don't see it immediately on your screen, just zoom out and you'll typically see where these paths are spanning. So for instance, if I hit pilot fiber here, I toggled off the fiber provider just a quick second. You can see we have that network path overlay. This information is game changer, right? And just a quick note about Pilot Fiber. For partners who have not heard about Pilot Fiber, they're a regional provider who mainly serves, I think they only serve the greater New York area, and they provide extremely competitive fiber rates for customers in these areas. Something, and I'm going to keep echoing this, right? ACS does a fantastic job of signing on more regional fiber providers than any other TSD. And not only do we bring them on board and do the rollout and call it a day, we bring them on board, we do a rollout, we add them to our partner portal. In addition to that, we make sure to get their assets so that partners like yourself can get in here, plug in an address, and get more provider options, right? Knowledge is power. The more information you can give your customers, the more that you can provide them, that's going to help you win those deals, right? So here's Pilot Fiber, the house, right? This is the address we've entered. You can see they're all across this New York area. And it just kind of helps you think about, potential other, even if you're prospecting, right? If you know that maybe the neighbor next door is also in need of services, or maybe you have a customer down the street, that's just going to give you that additional insight of where their fiber paths are. Now, you'll see their fiber paths here, but I just want to give the word of caution. Because you see the fiber paths, there's different access points across these fiber paths, right? So even though it's in front of the building, the access point could be, 50, 100, 200 feet away from the minimum point of entry. So just something to keep in mind, right? So there is an assumptions being made, looking at these fiber paths and then how you communicate that to customers. All right, so now that we've seen all the availability for this location, we can move on and get the real-time pricing. So now I can utilize PricingPro here. And what's great is, think these are two different tools. I just want to emphasize that distinction really quick, right? The fiber lookup is the availability portion, the real-time availability portion, where you see all the provider, the bird's eye views, all the providers that are available within that region. And then PricingPro is the real-time pricing feature within the tool, right? It's going to give us real-time pricing depending on the different product categories that we select here. So again, depending on the customer's budget, we can select dedicated internet, shared internet providers. But what you'll also notice is you'll also see SIP trunks, POTS replacement, and POTS. Right? So the PricingPro goes beyond just doing connectivity and also offers our partners the availability to quote these other services, right? We can do SIP trunks through net to phone. And again, you can confide in this pricing. If the customer needs 5 SIP trunks, we can run this pricing and see that pricing that we can present to the customer, right? Fortify, they have an awesome POTS replacement solution. For customers who still need the plain old telephone service POTS, we can also offer that through Bullseye and Lingo. And we're constantly adding the ability to price other products. Eventually, we'll be able to do UCaaS, hosted VoIP, and just other really convenient products like that. If I go back to my dedicated and shared internet, I can select the different providers. I can select Lumen, Verizon, Spectrum Fiber, AirSpring. Really, you can select any one of these providers that are available. Just to also want to show your customers that you have this really cool tool where you're able to show them all the different pricing options specifically for their address, and also just to try to get the most competitive price point for your customer. So the next step is to really create your quote, and you can select different speeds here, right? If you wanted to do 50 and 100 meg, different term options, you're able to select that. I'm going to do 100 meg across the board just to make it really simple for our customer here, our hypothetical customer. Do 100 megs. Do 3-year terms, typically going to get us the best pricing. But as you can see here through Lumen, I could do 1 and 2-year term, 2 and 3-year term. And for some providers, you'll see 5, 6, and 7-year term options as well. So I'll do 3-year term. Spectrum will do 100 meg. Static IP addresses, right? If they need more than 5, you can quote that out as well for a small nominal charge. And then with or without router options, right? That's going to impact the pricing. And then lastly here, we see that shared internet spectrum coax is available. I'm going to select that. We'll do the 1 gig, 0 IPs. This is on a month to month, and we'll leave the Wi-Fi router out. Oh, and one crucial step, guys, as you're generating the pricing for your customers, be sure to enter the RFQ name. That's going to be very, very important because you're going to want to reference these later. And then through these little menu bars up top, you can always revisit your search history and your RFQ history, right? The search is just the availability. The RFQ is going to be the actual pricing that you're going to produce for this address. But you want to look it up in a very convenient way, and also just to help you stay organized. This is going to be Sam's Industrial LLC. And I'm going to hit run pricing here. Immediately you'll notice the PricingPro is already doing its magic. It's pulling that real-time pricing from these provider tools, right? So that's how you can trust, that's how you can confide in the tool. You can trust that the pricing is going to be accurate. It's coming directly from the providers themselves. These are real-time systems that are producing the latest pricing points for this location. I already have the pricing. You can see how fast that was, right? The moment we looked up the address, grabbed the pricing, generated the pricing, we already have something that we can share with our customer. Really quickly though, on this same RFQ page, you'll notice that you have my logo up here, you have my title, my company info. You can always change this under your profile section. And the reason that's important is we have 2 different ways that you can present this information to your customers. The first way is you can email your customer a pricing text, which is going to be an email formatted text. And the second method is going to be emailing your customer an RFQ link. And I'll show you what both look like exactly in just a second. I'm going to fill out this information, Sam's Industrial. And then it's super important to do this as accurate as possible, right? Don't just put, placeholder info, like, make sure it's actually the customer's info, because you're actually going to send this to the customer, right? The email that you enter here is going to be the customer's email, right? This is what they're going to receive. So you want to make sure it's curated, it's customized, it's going to look professional. This is for Sam Smith. He is our IT manager. And we'll enter his phone number here. So now our RFQ is ready, right? Maybe we can look at all this. Let's interpret the pricing before we send it off to Sam Smith, just so we know what we're looking at, right? Verizon, Spectrum, AirSpring, Lumen. The most competitive price point is going to be Lumen at 100 meg, came at $415, extremely competitive. I just want to highlight, you'll notice things that say view note. Anytime you see that, very helpful, just select that view note, and it's going to give you helpful information about that specific provider or your opportunity. In this scenario, AirSpring is using Verizon as the access provider for speed at this location. That's going to be helpful information for you to know. Maybe the customer is already on a Verizon network and they need someone else as the access provider. That's going to clue you in onto that. And then also, if you're looking at this and you're like, hey, I don't want to give my customer 4 different options. I know these guys, they're very indecisive. I want to make this as easy as possible. You can just go ahead and remove any one of these providers from your quote. You just hit delete and it'll remove them from that quote. And then lastly here, shared internet providers, we can see the price point Spectrum coax. This is their 1 gig speed, month to month, 105. This could be a failover, maybe it's a small mom and pop shop that you're quoting out. We do this all day and with extreme efficiency. So next, say you are ready to send this to your customer. You can hit save and email customer here. It's going to populate this email template. And you can see here, it's going to say you can review the RFQ from this link, right? This is going to be the pretext that's going to be populated. So just keep that in mind. And then also not shown here, it's going to say hello first name, right? So we don't need to do the introduction. We can jump into the body. We'll say, please look at the RFQ below. Let me know if you have any questions. And then, right, the text that's going to follow is going to say you can review the RFQ from this link. I'm going to show you guys an example. Once the customer selects that link, they're going to get an automatic email with that link. The link's going to take the customer to this RFQ dashboard. Now, this is going to make it really easy for the customer to see all the pricing that you've presented them with. They're not going to see these little minuses because I'm in the admin view. I have that view, but for your customers, right, it's just going to show them all these different providers, the pricing. They're going to see the speeds that you've quoted out for them with or without router. And what's really great about this is that the moment your customer selects that link, you're going to get an automatic email saying, hey, Sergio, your customer Sam with Sam Industrial is viewing your link right now or has just opened up that RFQ. So it's going to do that in a very timely way where you can pick up the phone, you can send a text, you can send an email and mention to the customer, hey, if you happen to be looking at the RFQ or whenever you get a chance to look at that RFQ, let me know how I can assist, even though they've already opened this up. In addition to that, anytime you look at your own RFQs, again, because I created this, you're going to have this RFQ data. Only you're going to have this. The customer won't see this. This RFQ data is going to show you all the times that the customer has viewed the RFQ, if they forwarded this RFQ to maybe a competitor, and then also you can see where they're opening it from, right? If they're telling you they're in New York and they're opening it on the West Coast, it's just going to give you those insights to just have a better understanding of how your customer is responding to the RFQ that you're presenting them with. In addition to that, you'll see status, right? We've really built the FiberLookup and PricingPro, and especially the way you manage your RFQs as a mini CRM, right? Depending on what stage you are in presenting this to the customer, you can select a different stage in that RFQ, right? Maybe you're still negotiating, maybe you're waiting on a decision, maybe you got a verbal agreement, and that's going to be helpful when you look at your RFQ history because you can filter by these different stages. Hey, I want to look at all the RFQs that are in the decision phase or all the RFQs that are still in the information gathering stage, right? I need to do more follow-ups, get the customer in front of these things. So these are just more helpful insights that we provide on the PricingPro. Now, if I'm the customer, right, this is the customer's view. I'm the customer. I'm looking at all these pricings. Maybe I'm a very logical person. I say, hey, this, I just want the budget-friendly option. Lumen's going to be most competitive here. Your customer is going to hit request order, and you're going to get an automatic email saying, hey, Sergio, your customer Sam has just accepted the Lumen 100 meg for $415. That's going to be exciting, right? Because now you can work with your ACS channel manager and say, hey, Patrick, hey, David, our customer has confirmed this pricing. Let's generate the agreements, right? And you already have the base information here. You might have to do a small follow-up with more additional customer information, right? Maybe a secondary contact or something else you might need. But you now have the verbal from the customer that this is what they want. There's no confusion there. and you can work with your ACS channel manager to generate those agreements so that you can get them countersigned and get the order submitted. And I'll clue you guys into something very exciting. In the very near future, we're already beta testing this. It's already in the implementation process. We'll be able to go one step further, where instead of just this being a notification that the customer has accepted this, the customer will be prompted with a pop-up that allows them to enter their own information to generate their own agreement for that provider, where they'll be able to go from beginning to end, where the moment they hit submit, that contract is in motion to Lumen, it's in motion to AT&T, and in motion to all these providers, and that contract's being generated in real time, and they're going to get that confirmation email. It's just going to help eliminate any additional friction, and it's going to make that process from seeing the pricing to ordering the agreements a lot more smoother. So that's the big update in the near future. I can't wait to share that one with you guys once it's ready, but we'll be sure to do a whole demo on it and just give everyone a heads up via email. And then the one I didn't show is the email pricing text. If I just look at my Outlook here, I did this earlier. This is what it looks like if you were to just email your customer the pricing text, right? Maybe you feel they're not too savvy. Maybe they don't like clicking links, whatever the reason may be, you can decide to send your customer this email pricing text. And as you can see, it's a very similar format that we just did. It's going to have all the different providers, the pricing, the speed you quoted out. It's very nice design table where they can look at this and then they can respond to you as far as what they want to proceed with. Right. So yeah, so from beginning to end, that's how effective the FiberLookup's able to look up an address, go into PricingPro, generate the real-time pricing, and then write how you manage that pricing, right? Either through a pricing text or an RFQ link that takes them to this dashboard. This is a game changer, and again, I'm happy to jump on calls with other partners and their teams and any other reps they might be working with to really just emphasize some of these features because just the efficiency that comes out of it. And long are the days you got to send 5, 6, 7 different emails to different providers to get pricing. Because you have Pricing Pro and you have FiberLookup, you're able to do this, within minutes. And once you get faster and faster, your opportunities are just going to fly by. The next address I wanted to look at is an address in a more rural area, just to really highlight some of the creative ways in FiberLookup that we're able to look at these rural locations and quote them out. So this is going to be in Durant, Oklahoma. I'm going to paste that address, and again, I'm going to select from this drop down here. All right, so this is populating already. As you can see, right, the last opportunity, we had a data center which had like 20 different providers available. This is a more rural area, not extremely rural. It's a smaller town, but you'll see that there's less providers available, right? Sometimes you have those opportunities where customers in a downtown area, there's so many providers to choose from. It's very competitive, but oftentimes we have these customers who are in these smaller areas. They're in the suburbs. Maybe they're in the more outskirt areas of the city. How do we quote them? How do we quote them effectively and make sure we're getting them all their options? So for this business address, again, I'm going to hit uncluster. This is going to give me that expanded selection. And I can see there's 2 main providers in this area, Dobson Fiber and Vive. These 2 providers, just a quick note about these providers. These are regional fiber providers. You heard me talk about how ACS is, miles ahead of other TSDs when it comes to bringing on more regional fiber providers on board. We want to give our partners more provider options. If you were looking at this at another tool, you'd probably only see ACC up here. You wouldn't see these other regional fiber providers. And again, these regional fiber providers are effective and helpful because they're going to be very competitive in pricing because they're a lot smaller than some of the national providers. we tend to hear, more positive feedback in regards to customer inquiries being resolved, the technicians being able to be on site at a much faster rate. And then also, again, the competitive pricing and just the alternative that they present being in these areas. So Dobson Fiber and Vive, you'll find them in Oklahoma. They're also regional providers in other states and other cities as well too. So again, use FiberLookup for again, for pretty much every address, but also your rural customers. Your customers are going to be downtown. And then if you're just looking to see if there's additional availability for your customers, these tools are going to be a game changer. So if this was our customer here and they were looking for serviceability, we can see if we look at shared internet providers, Vibe is on net, Vive Coax is also on net, and Dobson Fiber is on net. And in fact, you'll see Dobson Fiber says on net, very near net, right? There's that extra emphasis. If I select this, typically you'll see that the status will give you, for some of these providers, you'll see that there's additional information about installation times, right? If I look at AT&T Fiber and I hit this one, we see it's FiberLit Tier 2, right? We see fiber is built to the location. However, some work could be needed, so expect a slightly longer installation time frame, right? So I encourage all our partners, as you're looking at these locations, select those statuses, and it's going to give you more information about predicting those install times for your customer. And it's not a matter of predicting them with 100% accuracy, but it's about setting the expectation, right? If you know something's might need a build out, especially for like, let's say Vive NearNet, right? Fiber is close to the location, but a build out is required. They might have to do a site survey to determine the cost before they can proceed, right? It's just having that additional information that's really going to help set the expectations for your customers, right? So that they're aware about the installation timeframes, you're communicating with them. The fact that you have this additional information is just going to make you look better. And again, it's all available on this tool. And again, one other provider that I mentioned earlier was Beyond Reach, right? They're a fixed wireless provider nationwide, and they're going to thrive in locations where there's not going to be a whole lot of provider options. Because it's fixed wireless, it's typically that microwave dish that goes on the rooftop. So this is going to be very dependent on line of sight. If there isn't big obstructions like a big high rise or huge trees around the building, they're going to be very competitive and a good choice for those areas. If I select, again, that status again, just to emphasize those statuses, Beyond Reach Near Net, right? And then it's good not to make the assumption, if you see near net for one provider and you see near net for another provider, different providers have different definitions for how they perceive these things, right? So Vive near net, whereas Dobson said near net indicates that, there might be a build out required. For Beyond Reach, their near net status says, with 70% certainty, we're able to deliver service to the specified address. A desktop survey may be required to confirm, right? So that's a lot better chance than a provider who says, hey, near net, a build out is required, definitely. Whereas Beyond Reach is saying, hey, this is near net. There's a great probability that we're going to be able to get service here at 70+%. So just treat every status as a unique status and make sure you're looking at those to get the full picture. One thing I didn't mention earlier is if you go to satellite here, you can toggle on labels. And then this is going to give you, I'm going to toggle off these fiber providers. And then again, this is using Google's overlay from, the companies that are registered with Google My Business. You'll be able to see these different providers throughout the whole city, right? Maybe it's a specific customer you're looking for, or just to emphasize for yourself, like, oh, this is the Durant city clerk, that you're looking at the right building. But it's also just, very informative to know what's around you. In addition to that, there's just some other cool tips and tricks that are on here on the FiberLookup. There's this very cool ruler feature here. I can select the ruler and I can just drag this, right? Maybe I want to know, let's say if I toggle back on the fiber providers here, and I want to know how far I am from the neighboring, the neighbor back here who also has Dobson on net. I'm 50 feet away, 60 feet away. That's just additional information that when you're communicating to the customer or where you're working with Dobson or Vibe, you're able to communicate in a way where, you already know what you're talking about. You've already done your homework. You know what this site offers, what's available, what's around there. It's just going to make you look better, right? And I think that's one of the greatest benefits to the fiber lookup, right? It's the information that it presents to you to allow you to make better and more informed decisions. You know what's available, you know who's on net, you can communicate to the customer these things. And then, of course, through the Pricing Pro, you're able to get them that real-time pricing. I think I've covered all the features that I wanted to highlight today. The one last, just in closing, I just want to emphasize, for our partners who are already utilizing this, again, any feedback you have on the tool, any questions you have on the tool, feel free to let me know. And for partners who are looking at this tool for the very first time, right? This is going to be this really should be a part of your everyday process for your customers, for what they're looking for, their bandwidth needs, and then again, that real-time pricing that we're able to provide them. You're going to find that it's just going to be so much more efficient. And lastly, for partners who are utilizing this, and maybe you have a lot on your hands right now, lean on your ACS team as well, right? Every ACS partner has a dedicated team. They have a dedicated channel manager, a dedicated support manager. Lean on these people to support you in these searches as well, too, right? If you get caught in the kind of just the nitty gritty of just helping your customers, maybe you're on site and you need help with additional quoting, we're happy to quote this for you all day. We're experts at this tool. We've been using it for, nearly a decade now. So yeah, we're happy to support you in that matter as well too. You can always go to your ACS partner portal to figure out who your contacts are, to find emails, phone numbers, and to see who's a part of your dedicated team. But yeah, I just want to thank everybody for their time today. I'll take a moment to look at some questions. Let's see, we have some Q&A here. Great question from Pablo. Can Canada addresses be looked up nationwide? We do have Canada addresses. I'm glad you brought that up. We have a few providers and we're constantly adding more providers. The main one that comes to mind is TerraGo. You will find them in the Canada areas. And we're going to continue to add more Canadian providers, right? So that's been really big for our partners as well, too, right? The availability to quote not only in the US, but also in Canada. Sometimes the addresses, because Canada uses a totally different address system, you might, my best recommendation is just to make sure that the address is on Google. The address is on Google, it's going to translate to being able to be searched up on the fiber lookup. But yes, you definitely have the ability to quote those Canadian addresses. Let's see. Kyle wants to know, how can we gain access to the tool? Great question. If you are already an ACS partner, you already have access to the tool. You most likely you received a welcome email. For whatever reason you can't find it or you need that email sent to you again, we can definitely do that after this call. But yeah, any ACS partner has access to this tool. If you're not an ACS partner yet, you can become an ACS partner. There's no commitment. We can have that conversation, how we can support you. We'll connect you with a regional channel manager. We have channel managers nationwide, depending if you're on the East Coast, Central, West Coast, even specialized channel managers, right? If you're in a very niche vertical where you only work with real estate or you only work with automotive, we can connect you with someone on our team. Once we connect you with someone on our team, we can then look into getting you access to the tool. But if you're an employee to an existing partner, we can give you access to this tool all day. We'd be happy to support you. And I can see my colleagues kind of already addressed that, so we'll be sure to help you out. I think the last questions have been answered. But again, so we'll be sure to send our partners a copy of this recording. The next call is going to be in March 18th. And yeah, it's gonna be March 18th. So be lookout for that social post, be on the lookout for the email blast. And I just want to emphasize to our partners who are here today, firstly, thank you for being here, but be sure to come back for next month, right? Every month we're adding more providers. Like we recently added Vive, right? They have coax, share fiber, broadband. We're constantly adding more providers, making this tool that much more powerful and effective for your daily sales process. So be sure to join us back. Thank you everyone for joining, and I'm going to sign off now. And so we'll be in touch for the next one. Thank you.